Well, it's AD 30. We're in that last week. It's event 6. There are 12 events that happen on Tuesday. This is the week of the crucifixion. Sunday, the triumphal entry. Monday, the fig tree and the temple cleansing. And Tuesday, we found a challenge to Jesus and his telling of 3 parables. And now we come to a trick. The Herodians, which were the ones that wanted Herod back on the throne, had joined forces with the Jews who wanted somebody from David's lineage on the throne, both against the Roman government and both against Jesus, came together and sent some spies, some undercover agents, if you will, to try to trap Jesus in a horns of dilemma kind of a question, because there was a tax that the Romans had placed on the Jews, which was a very unpopular tax. It was a poll tax. Now that sounds like a fair tax because it sounds like it's a democracy. But that poll tax is probably a bad term. It's more like a head tax, a tribute to Caesar because he rules the area and you're paying him tribute for living in one of the areas that he rules. And so here we find this tax, which was typically a 1 day's wages once a year kind of a tax, not a horrendously high tax, probably would equate to about 1% of a person's total income. Nevertheless, that wasn't the only taxes that the Romans inflicted. There were all kinds of sales and trade taxes and all kinds of other taxes that they put on the Jews. Nevertheless, it's said that perhaps the Jewish tax situation in the days of Jesus was around 12.5%, which is really less than what we pay today. So perhaps they shouldn't have complained as much as they did about taxes. But nevertheless, these groups went to Jesus and they said, tell us, is it proper to pay this toll tax, yes or no? And these spies, potentially, if you look at the Luke account in chapter 20, or if you look in the Matthew account in chapter 22, you'll find that additional information that these were spies and that they were deliberately trying to get Jesus to intimidate himself. If he said they should pay the tax, he'd be unpopular with the Jews. And if he said don't pay the taxes, then they would turn him over to the Roman government, which was certainly what they were hoping for, because they wanted to have their hands clean, not be unpopular with the people, and at the same time take care of Jesus and get him out of the way. So trick question for Jesus, and Jesus said, bring me a coin. And the typical poll tax was a denarius, and he said, okay, let's look at the coin, whose image is on it? And of course it's Caesar's image, and he said, render unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and render unto God the things that are God's. Now, it's interesting because there was a temple tax. It actually was higher than the poll tax. It was a voluntary tax, unlike the poll tax, but it was actually 2 days' wages once a year to help support the temple. And you certainly we could see that as all of these taxes add up, there is a significant tax on the people, because they were expected to give a tithe of their produce, and so they had the constant Roman taxes, they had the temple tax, they had the temple expected offerings, which were beginning at 10%. So we find certainly a basis for the tithe that we give to the church. But nevertheless, we find Jesus answering in a way that made the people marvel at Jesus and his wisdom. And they set him up, because when they came to him, they said, we know you're truthful. We know you teach God's truthfulness. We know that you have no partiality to anyone, and you don't step down to anyone. They flattered him all over the place. Always beware of people that want to constantly flatter you. They may have improper motivation for their flattery, looking to get something in return for the flattery, or to disarm you so that they can do something that you may not want them to do. So, in any case, we certainly see this taxation situation. Aren't you glad that ours, to giving a tenth, is just returning to God that which is God's? He owns it all. All that we have is His, and He only asks us to return 10%. And then after that, everything is an offering of love and gratitude. So we see the basis for this, but we also see the wisdom of Jesus, because it says He discerned, he understood that they were trying to trap Him, and He always told us to honor government and to do what government said, because God allowed them to be an authority. And so we continue to recognize the wisdom of God, wisdom of Christ, as He guides us through even the waters of taxation. And that's my thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day.